Hello, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to be reacting to Visit America, the don'ts of visiting the USA. I'm interested in this one because I've seen it pop up a lot in my suggestions. Now, because I do reaction videos, YouTube recommends a lot of other reactors to me and kind of what they're looking at and things like that. And this is one that keep seeing popping up, so I'm interested to check it out. So, yeah, full disclosure, whilst I haven't seen the video, I've seen it pop up a lot, and I've I've kind of I've got the idea from other people doing it. So um, yeah, I'm looking forward to this. The don'ts of visiting America. What comes to mind about what you shouldn't do when visiting America? Um, First of all, I've never visited America. I've actually never left the UK, which is really sad. I've always wanted to. I'd love the idea of traveling to different countries and things like that, but I've never really had the opportunity to, for one reason or another. So, the thing when you think of America, like the biggest things you kind of think of immediately is the guns. And whilst to Americans it's totally normal to have guns, you see them in supermarkets or like, superstores and things like that, or wherever you go that, you might see them and police have them all the time. Whereas in the UK you never see them. Like you almost never see them. The only time you see them is on like specially trained armed police officers, and that's only in some places, like in certain city centers and things like that, or outside, government buildings. So I imagine there's something to do with guns in here. Like, don't overreact when you see a gun. Don't try and you know ask a police officer if you can play with his gun or something like that. um, but yeah, I can't really think of anything else that comes to mind. So this is going to be interesting. I'm going to learn something here. Let's get started. This is a 14-minute video. So the don'ts of visiting the USA.
Hey there, fellow travelers. Mark here with Walter's World, and today we're in Mystic, Connecticut, in a beautiful place here in the U.S. And today what we have for you are the don'ts of visiting the U.S. because
I have a
anywhere you
gorgeous
go in the
shot.
world, there's things you should do, but there's also things you shouldn't do. And this video is going to just cover the U.S. in general, okay? And our first don't for when you visit the U.S. is don't touch the Americans. Look, Americans really like their personal space. It's like they have a bubble around them, and if you get too close to them, they feel very, 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 very uncomfortable, okay?
I feel
So
like it's the same for
make sure you
anyone,
give them a
really.
little distance when you are there, because I know when I go to Italy and Spain and stuff, be like, Mark, how's it going? All this stuff. And my American friends sometimes go, wow, they're really, really affectionate. Like, that's just how it is. Here, space is key. The second don't I have.
Just before we move on to that, that surprises me. It's the same here in the UK. Like, you don't really want to get too close to people. Everyone's often quite reserved and don't really speak out to each other that much. Um, in my mind, obviously, Americans are a lot more open and a lot more kind of friendly. They chat with people on the bus that they don't know or in the shop and things like that. Whereas in the UK, they don't. So that's an interesting thing to know.
For you is don't count on public transportation. Look, when we were in China and we were in throughout Europe and South America, we took buses and trains and planes and all kinds of stuff to get all over the place because public transport is really developed. Here in the US, you cannot count on public transport to get you a lot of places. Yes, in big cities like New York and Chicago and stuff like that, you can get around for the public transport and it'll take you where you want to go. But a lot of towns, small towns especially, in middle-sized cities, the public transportation networks are not very good. And at night, sometimes it's not very safe. So that is
Interesting.
kind of a frustrating thing. So yes, you're going to probably have to rent a car when you come here, okay? So just have a heads up for that. And that kind of leads into the next.
Before we move on to that, I know I keep pausing. I think I might do that over the ones that I have something to add that's like a contrast to the UK. Um, for those that don't know. So that's really interesting to know. In the UK, obviously it's quite small, and there's a lot of small villages. There's a lot of big towns and whatnot, and they're all very well kind of interconnected with buses, coaches, trains, planes as well. So that's really interesting. I So for me, for example, I used to take a train to work because that was the only way I get there. It's like an hour-long train. Then I moved, and uh, before the whole lockdown thing, I would then take the bus to work because that just made more sense because it was more, it was cheaper, and it was more direct than taking the train. It's interesting to say that it's not safe at nighttime. I suspect that's probably the case with a lot of public transport, really, especially when it's quite empty. Um, However, I know in the UK, based on my experience anyway, the drivers often have like a direct button, like panic button or something like that, which basically contacts the police. So often what you'll find, well not often, but every now and again, what you'll find is if there's someone like kind of making trouble on the bus, or runs into the bus without paying for a ticket and refuses to leave, the driver will carry on going, and they would have pressed the button, and then at the next bus stop there'd be a bunch of police that basically like rush into the bus and deal with them. So that's interesting. I'm interested to find out actually for those that aren't from either America or the UK, would you consider your public transport safe at night? Um, and like how are they safe? Do they have like a guard on there? Like an armed guard or someone that is there to protect the passengers. Um, yeah. Oh, and you'll often find with buses, same with trains in the UK. There's often police that kind of just public transport police they're called that kind of go on the buses and ride them and trains and ride them to kind of just be there just in case. Um, so yeah, I'll be interested in finding out how that happens in other parts of the world. Let's continue.
Next don't I have for you is that is don't underestimate the size of the U.S. The United States,
Massive.
it's continental U.S. is like continental Europe. It's huge. I mean, would you think of driving from I'm going to do go to from Lisbon to Paris and then go up to Tallinn and then head down to Sofia? No, you're like that is insanely far. It's the same thing when you come to the US. I meet a lot of travelers that are like, oh, I'm going to fly into New York, grab a car, drive down to Miami to see Miami Beach, and then head over to LA. I'm like, dude, you got 2 weeks? You're going to spend the entire time in cars. The distances here are insane. So what I recommend is picking a region. So, we're going to stay here in New England and see New England. Or we're going to go in the southeast, go to Atlanta and Savannah and Charleston, things like that. Or visit the West Coast. You do that to get a better idea of the culture there and things like that. But also, it's just the logistics things because it's so far between the places. And to go along with that, for Americans, a 3 to 4 hour drive, that's a day trip. Like my parents live 3 hours away. I will literally get up, go drive, have lunch with my mom, and then drive back home just for lunch. 6 hours in the car. No big deal. It's about 7 hours when we start to think, that kind of is a long drive. And we drive the entire way through. Okay, this isn't like, I must stop every 2 hours and have a 15-minute break. Oh, no, no, no. No. We drive all the way through, okay? Now, my next don't for you when you come here is don't think that the sticker price is the end price. Look, in the US, we
Yeah.
have sales tax. I know other countries, they have VAT, value added taxes. They're already put into the price of products. So when you see, it's $1 or €1, I only pay €1. In the US, it is not like that. We have sales tax. So a certain percentage is added onto that product. And the thing is, I cannot tell you what the sales tax will be where you're going to travel because it's different everywhere. Cities, states, counties, different products have different sales taxes, and some products don't have sales taxes. Some cities don't have sales taxes. Some have 10% sales tax. It can be different anywhere you go. So if you're going to go get your dollar menu item at a McDonald's or a Culver's or a wherever, it's not going to be a buck. Where I live, there's 2 cities right by where I live. One, it's going to be $1.08. The other one, it's going to be $1.09. So be ready for that. And it's not just the sales tax. Also, there could be the tipping on top. And that leads us into the
That's something that's really interesting, and that kind of freaks me out a little bit because obviously in the UK you have like the recommended retail price, and the taxes kind of comes in the package as is. So when you see the price on the shelf or on the actual item itself, that's what you're going to be paying when you take it to the till. Um, that kind of freaks me out a little bit, especially that like, do you know? So obviously, you'll probably know what you'll actually be paying when you're in your hometown. So you'll know that it'll kind of just be built in that okay, that's an extra 10% sales tax. So this is actually not $3. It's whatever. Um, does that does that freak out of like Americans? Like, do you know when these when these sales taxes end, or is it just a case of you pick up the item? you have no idea what the sales tax is on it. You kind of get a vague idea of how much it is, and the only time you know is when you actually go to pay for it. Um, and because of that, do you end up taking more money if you pay in cash than you would expect to be paying, just in case the sales tax is different where you're getting it from? That would be interesting to know. So moving on to tipping, this is a really interesting thing as well. Tipping is a huge thing in America, from my understanding, where it's something here as well. Like, it's quite common here, but it's nowhere near like you don't feel like you have to tip. You don't have to tip if you don't want to tip. You have the option to tip, and often people do tip, um, particularly in restaurants, or maybe if they're taking like a taxi or something like that. But it's not something that's generally frowned upon if you don't. Um, I think that's to do with like the wages that they get. I don't know.
Fifth don't, and that is don't forget to tip. Look, in the US, you tip 15 to 20% at a sit down restaurant, okay? Now, McDonald's, stuff like that, no, you don't tip at a fast food place, but if it's a sit down restaurant where they bring you your food and stuff like that, you will tip them 15 to 20%. If you are in a group of 6 people or more, sometimes they automatically put the gratuity on there, which sometimes can be 18% or something like that. Look, when you come to the US, there's a reason why the food is like so affordable. You're like, wow, it's cheap to go out and eat in the US. It's because there's kind of this understanding that the service fees and paying for the workers and the waitresses and stuff like that, that goes on to you, the person eating there, with the tips. So the food and stuff can be cheaper when you go out to eat. And I know a lot of people say, I don't believe in tipping and this tipping isn't the right thing. They should pay their people more. Well, if you want to pay more for your food, they can do that. But they don't, okay? So tipping is something we do here in the US, so do tip that 15 to 20%. Oh, also, if you're at a bar and you're buying drinks, you're gonna wanna tip a couple dollars here and there. Otherwise, the bartender might not be too quick to come back and get you your next drink.
Interesting.
So following off of those tips, what you need to realize is our next don't is don't be freaked out by the over-the-top service and free stuff you sometimes get in the US. Look, because of tipping and commissions and stuff like that, yes, there is a lot of over-the-top service here. But the thing is, in the US, the people actually are pretty nice and they want to help people. And sometimes for some travelers, if they come from countries where people don't get a lot of service sometimes, it can be a bit much, so don't freak out about it. Also with that is don't be freaked out with some of the free stuff you get when you go to restaurants. Look, if you go to a restaurant and they bring you bread and water, chips and salsa and all those really good things, that's included in your meal. Okay, so if you're going to be buying something, they're going to give you some free stuff. It might be some bread, it might be a salad, it might be a water, it might be something like that. So don't be like shocked when like, wait, I didn't order this bread, I didn't order this salad. Oh no, that comes with your meal. Okay. Now the thing is though, you can't just go in and get chips and salsa and walk out. All right, you actually have to order some food when you go there. Now my next don't for you is don't smoke cigarettes in the U.S. If you're smoking cigarettes in the US, people will look at you like you're trying to kill their baby. Cigarettes is like totally verboten, like people really frown upon it, which is funny because when they talk about marijuana and stuff like that, people don't seem to care as much, but cigarettes, oh, you're trying to kill my baby with that cigarette 2 blocks away. So if you do smoke, make sure you try to find a place where you can smoke, because a lot of restaurants, or pretty much all restaurants, hotels, stuff like that, have smoke free. It's smoke free. So you got to go like 15 to 20 feet away from doing things. So that can be something. So I've come here outside my favorite liquor store to give you.
So that's interesting. I didn't know it was so frowned upon within the US. In the UK, smoking is very common, like very common. People start smoking from a very young age, like during school, mostly due to like peer pressure and things like that. Like, oh, your friends are doing it, so you feel like pressured into doing it as well. And most, I suppose in the older generations, most of the people I know smoke. However, less so in my generation and younger, I think. Particularly in my generation, I noticed like a difference. Like I noticed um, that not as many people were smoking as compared to the people I know that are older. Um, whilst it's not really frowned upon um, to smoke, but it is at the same time. It's like if you were young and you start smoking, it'd be really frowned upon. Your parents would hate that, but they don't really. A lot of the time, they don't really stop you. Um, or if they try, then you'll just end up doing it more. So that's really interesting. Personally, I don't smoke. I've never smoked, but everyone in my family smokes. It's not something I personally like, but I don't frown on other people for doing it because I know that it is addictive, and with that sort of stuff, they can't help it. A lot of the time. Um, but yeah, that's really interesting. For some reason, I always thought that it was maybe more common in the US, but I don't know why I would have thought that.
The next don't, and that is don't try to buy alcohol unless you're 21, or cigarettes unless you're 18 or over in the US. They will not sell them to you. And the thing is, don't forget your ID, because if you look like you're 40 or under, they may ask you for that. And don't get mad at them, because if they don't ask, they could get in trouble and get fined. So don't be surprised, because we've had friends that have come here, try to buy alcohol, and they're like, sorry, you don't look old enough. Oh, I don't have my ID. Too bad. And the thing
That's
is,
fair enough.
it's not just the person buying. They might ask anybody with you, so make sure everybody has their ID
Similar
if they
in the
want to buy
UK as
liquor, or they want to buy alcohol, or if they want to buy cigarettes. So just FYI on that one. Oh, that's also another don't I have for you is don't bother with a metric system when you come here. We don't use we don't use meters, we don't use kilometers, we don't use liters. It is inches, feet, miles, gallons, pounds, things like that. And I'll put a conversion chart here to show you. But honestly, you may say, hey, how far is it to this next town? And they'll tell you, oh, it's like 60 miles. You're like, what's that? Just know 60 miles, it's about 100 kilometers, okay? So just do that, because the people here won't get it. I mean, I have people, when I'll tell them, oh, it's 100 meters away, they're like, 100 meters? It's like 100 yards. Oh, okay. So make sure you do know your imperial system, okay? Because metric, we don't do that so much here. So our next don't is when you do come to the US, there's a couple things you don't talk about, okay? One is gun control, and two is politics, because no matter where you are, you will get people on either side of the spectrum, and they will have an argument with you. So it's best just to lay off those topics, talk about the weather. Oh, wouldn't it be nicer if it was sunny today and we could go sailing? Yes, that would be much better than discussing gun control or politics. Just putting that one out there for you
Okay.
right now. Now, my next don't for you is don't assume that all the US and all the Americans are the same. Because I know a lot of people say, oh, you're a typical American. Well, it's like saying you're a typical European. Look, the US has all kinds of different cultures, all kinds of different people, all kinds of different topography and scenery and stuff like that. And when you come here, don't assume it's all the same. You will see regional differences in cuisines and how people treat each other, and how everything looks, all kinds of stuff. So don't just think there's just one kind of American. They're all fat, slobby guys with ponytails. No, there's actually a lot of skinny people in America too, not just fat guys like me and my buddy Jeff. There are those. So don't assume it's all the same, all right? So do go out and explore. And that's why I always say is if you're going to come to the U.S., go and explore different regions, because you'll get a really different feel. Because going to the southeast and seeing the plantation homes and going to see the southern towns down there versus going to the northwest and Seattle and Portland, or going to San Francisco, or going to the Midwest with Chicago and Milwaukee, you're going to have a very different feel, which is really a cool thing to do. And you start to understand is, wow, the U.S. does have a lot of different cultures within it, a lot of different feelings when you go around here. And following on with that, I guess I would say another don't is don't assume there's no culture in the U.S., because there are a lot of cultural centers out there. If you go down to New Orleans, you see a very rich culture there. You go to New York or Boston, here in New England, you have a very distinct culture. In the Midwest with Chicago, Milwaukee, you go to the West Coast. I mean, there's a lot of different culture here. Historic culture with the Native Americans, or more recent culture here. I mean, you have all that here you can really take in. And saying there's no culture in the U.S., it's not really true, because there are all these different cultural centers with great museums like the Art Institute of Chicago, or the Met in New York, the Getty in LA. There's all kinds of stuff you can see and do when you are here. For a cultural trip, it's not just seeing beautiful landscapes and seascapes like we are here in Connecticut. There's a lot more to it than that. Now, my next don't for you is one that I kind of get a lot of questions about. We actually have a video on this, and then that is, don't think that how are you or how's it going is actually a question. Look, when we say how's it going, how are you, these kind of things in the US, it's not a question, it's a statement. It's like saying hi. Okay, just take it as a hi. Because a lot of people say, everyone asks me how I'm doing. When I try to tell them how I'm feeling, they're like, well, I was just saying, how are you? Here, how are you is just hi. Think of it that way. It's like in France, ça va, ça va. How's it going? How's it going? We're good to go. In Portuguese, tudo bem, everything good. You answer back, tudo bem, everything good. It's just, how are you? How are you? You move on, okay? So don't think it's an actual question, all right?
It's similar to the UK. We have a lot of things like that where it's like, "You're all right." That's saying hi. Or "What's up?" is another one. Is also kind of like saying hi. But then you also get people that say "What's up" after you've said hi, and it's kind of like, are they asking you what you're doing or how are you feeling? So there's a bit of confusion there sometimes. Um, you often get people like so you don't get people asking how are you, and as like a and they don't expect a response. They do expect a response, but often in the UK it's usually one of the following. It's usually something like, "I'm all right. How about you?" "I'm not bad, thanks," or "I'm not too bad, thanks." It's often quite a it's like it's almost a negative, but it's not. It's like, "I'm not too bad. I'm not great, but I'm not too bad." It's, everyone's just like, "Yeah, I'm okay. How are you?" No one really ever expects you to go into detail with that, and often when people do go into details with a response like that, it's kind of like, "Oh, I didn't I didn't sign up for this kind of response." So that's interesting to know that that's also in America.
Now, another don't I have for you is don't expect a lot at the fancy hotels. You know, you're thinking, oh, I'm going to pay more money for this hotel. I'm probably going to get nicer stuff, like a nicer breakfast, better Wi Fi. Oh, no, 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 no. For some reason in the US, it seems like the nicer the hotel, the more you have to pay for the things you think would be free, like Wi Fi and breakfast. So don't
Interesting.
feel like you have to stay at the fancy hotels, because honestly, if you're going to be going out and exploring, you just need a couple beds, right? So stay at the hotels in the US, and the cheaper ones will give you free Wi Fi, free breakfast, all these kind of things, which is really nice. So don't expect that from the fancy hotels. Another don't I have for you is don't skip out on the local food. Look, we're here in New England. We're here in Connecticut. We've been having lobster and clams and oh my god, the New England clam chowder. Oh, my tummy is just like more, more. It's fantastic. And when I'm in the South, man, Southern fried chicken, mac and cheese, barbecue. Oh my god. The food in the different regions in the US are great. So don't just go to chain restaurants. When you go to your hotel, ask them, "Hey, what's some local restaurants around here? What's some locally owned and operated restaurants?" So you can go there and check out those places because they really give you a great experience. And I find a lot of times those ones actually have better service than the chain restaurants because it's a mom and pop place where the owner is the ones helping you out. And that is really kind of a cool thing. Now, my next stone for you is
So that's something that is really interesting. Particularly in the UK, if you ever visit the UK, it's always worth kind of looking at the different food places around because the UK is a very diverse place. It's not full of, British people, like, prim and proper people. It's full, it's people from all over the world that have, come to the UK. They're either like they live here, they work here, and you often so because of this, you get a lot of different foods available to you, a lot of different cultures from around the world. Either as like a takeaway or like food stands and things like that. So that's something that I love doing. Like when I've visited London before, I've stayed in like a hotel or a B&B and something like that, and then I've gone out and looked around at the different food stands. And often you get really nice things from kind of like small businesses, small stands and things like that. So it's definitely worth kind of exploring that part. So that's really interesting to know in the USA as well. But yeah, that's something that I love about the UK is how diverse it is. How like wherever you are, there's going to be a whole like there's people from all over the world. There's people from all different cultures, all different backgrounds, and you learn a lot from people like that. Um, and yeah, I always find it fascinating speaking to people that either weren't initially born in the UK, or maybe they were, but their family is from somewhere else in the world, and kind of learning that background and learning the different cultures of other parts of the world and how kind of varied it is and how different things are. That stuff fascinates me. Um, but yeah, if you ever do come to the UK, it's worth sort of checking that stuff out. We have a lot of different varieties in food. Some you might not like, some you might love. It's not all about fish and chips. That's just the classic that people go to. But yeah,
don't get sick. Look, Healthcare in the US is insanely expensive. And just because you come from another country doesn't mean they're not going to find you for the bill. All right? So if you're going to be coming here, make sure you get travel insurance or trip insurance so in case you do get sick or you do break an ankle or you do break an arm or something happens to you, your insurance will cover it. Now you might have to pay it first and your insurance pays you back, but at least you'll get something back because healthcare here in the U.S. is insanely expensive. Okay, so make sure you're prepared for that. And I guess my last don't I'm going to have for you is one that
That's something that really scares me about the US. Just like how expensive healthcare is there. Obviously, it's a very kind of classic and stereotypical thing to be like for someone that isn't from the US to mention. But genuinely, that kind of freaks me out. Like seeing online like the bills that people get from some relatively minor things. Like obviously here in the UK, I'm sure you know we have like the NHS. We have a private sector which you pay for, but then we also have the NHS which provides like free healthcare to a certain extent. You can't go in and if you wanted to get say like a nose job or something like that, like or you wanted to get like your teeth fixed and things like that. Often you won't get it for free unless it's something that's actually detrimental to your health. Um, but yeah, so as part of the NHS, often this stuff is free. Um, free in the sense of you don't pay for it once you're there and once you've left. You kind of pay for it in your taxes, your monthly taxes and things like that. Everyone pays a little bit to them in your employment tax and whatnot. But yeah, so like for me personally, I've probably been to the hospital like in my life, like twice. No, yeah, maybe like twice. One was when I broke my arm in two places, playing rounders in school. Um, and yeah, didn't have to pay for anything there. It's always a quite straightforward thing. Obviously, because of this, I don't know if it's because of this, but the NHS is always kind of strained because they're not getting enough funding, and that is one of the downsides of not having this kind of thing. But yeah, I think it's something that we undervalue compared to say America. Like we do appreciate the NHS a lot, but I feel like some people certainly don't and don't see the kind of gift they're getting by not having to pay ridiculous amounts for surgery or like healthcare. Because like in America that can like cause you to go homeless or lose your home because of medical bills, which is absolutely, it blows my mind. um And yeah, like I said before, don't think that because we say, "Oh, the NHS is free," it's not all free. It's only kind of the specific like health related stuff, like getting surgeries and things like that that you need to have in order to survive or continue living normally. Anything that is kind of not that urgent, um, something that's to do with looks or something that you just want to, you know, change about yourself, but it's not necessarily a detriment to your health, then that sort of stuff is usually paid for. Same with like medications. Depending on the type of medications, if you speak to a doctor and they give you a prescription, depending on the type, it will either be free, so you can keep getting a repeat prescription for free, the doctor, or certain medications such as like mental health ones you will have to pay for, but that is capped at a maximum of, I think it's like £9 something. So you can't pay. They can't charge you more than £9 something. Um, so they can't charge you more than say $10 or $15 or whatever. For any medication of certain types that's prescribed by a doctor. That I'm aware of anyway. That's my understanding of it. I could be completely wrong there, but yeah, that kind of freaks me out about the US. That's like one of the main things that does freak me out about it, actually.
people actually got mad at me for when I lived in other countries when I told them the US has 50 states. And they said, no, the US has 52 states. Look, don't think the US has 52 states. The US has 50 states, okay? Just a heads up on that one. I'm sure that people are going to be commenting down below that when I was in school, they told me 52. No, there's 48 on the mainland, and then Alaska and Hawaii are 49 and 50, all right? So, those are our don'ts for visiting the US. What are some of the don'ts you have for the US? Because I know
That's interesting to me. I didn't personally know how many states there are. I've heard it mentioned. People have told me in the past. I've just forgotten. It's not something that I tend to keep in my memory, to be honest. Why do people say that there's 52 states? What states are they including in there that isn't actually a state of America? Or is it just a misconception? Is do people just believe it's 52 because other people have said it's 52? Because originally when he was saying that, I was thinking, oh, are they not counting Hawaii, for example? But they are. So I'm interested to learn like why do people say it's 52? Like where's the misconception in there? Is it due to just people saying the wrong number entirely, or was it states that used to be part of America that are no longer part of America? Or is it just areas that people seem to think are American when they're not actually American? Um yeah, I'm really interested in finding that out actually. That was interesting. There's nothing that particularly blew me away. Nothing that I'm like, wait a minute, what? But there's some stuff there that kind of was interesting to me to understand the contrast between, say, the UK and the US. The biggest ones for me were definitely the healthcare. That if I was living in the US, I would be so scared of that. Like I'd be, I suspect a lot of people avoid going to the hospital when they need to go to the hospital because of the bills, um, that would come along with it. Like, it's crazy the fact that you could say, like, pass out or something, and you get picked up by an ambulance without your consent or your kind of, your knowledge of it, but then you get charged like a stupid amount for that. And by stupid, I mean very large amount. Whether or not that's, you should be paying for it or not is not really my place to say. Um, but wow, yeah, that's that's yeah, that kind of blows me away. The other stuff kind of makes sense. That's interesting how he mentioned at the start about the personal bubbles that people have. They don't like people getting up too close. Um, that makes sense. I think that's similar in a lot of places, but like the hugs and things like that. I would have actually thought that that would have been something that is kind of acceptable in America because of how open people are with each other and how often, how much they like to speak to other people that they don't know. Compared to here in the UK, like you might be on the bus with the same person for years and you might never ever say a single word to them other than excuse me or something like that. So people are a lot more closed in the UK. Yeah, that surprised me. Um, oh, and also the sales tax that does kind of freak me out because obviously the more expensive something is, the bigger the difference of what they're displaying on the shelf compared to what they're actually charging. Because if that happened in the UK, if they displayed something on the shelf as a certain price, then charged you something differently, they'd be outraged. Like, what? How dare you? um, yeah. The I didn't pause at the day trip part where they're like, yeah, like a 3 hour journey for them is just like something they do. It's not a big deal for them. It's only up to like 7 hours where it becomes a big deal. I didn't pause on there, but there's a lot of things there that's interesting to me because you can travel across the entire UK in like, you know, 7 hours or something like that. Like you can travel, say, from like Manchester, that's like upper upper middle of the UK. Oh, you can't see my hand. Upper middle of the UK, all the way down to say like Cornwall, which is the very bottom left, in like 6 hours driving, or 40 minutes on a plane. Um, Same if you wanted to go to London, which is just the very bottom. That's another like anywhere between 3 and 6 hours, depending if you drive or take a train or something like that. So that kind of 3 hours to someone in the UK is like a long way. Like, oh, that's that's a journey. But then I've had friends in America that have mentioned like, oh yeah, I just drive over there. That's no problem. Like talking like driving distances within a single state, which is like a lot of hours. So that's something that I think is a really good point to bring up. But yeah, I'm always very shocked at how large the US really is. Um, Particularly like things like the classic of the Grand Canyon. Everyone knows what the Grand Canyon is. They all kind of know what it looks like from pictures and videos, but no one really truly appreciates the scale of it until you're there, I suspect. I think that's probably the same with a lot of stuff. But yeah, that was really interesting. I'm interested to see if there's any others because I see there's like the don't. Oh yeah, the don'ts of traveling. There's loads of stuff. Okay. I wonder if there is. Oh, I want to check this one out. The don'ts of visiting London. I suspect they're going to talk about, the Queen's Guard and whatnot. Um, but yeah, I'm interested to check that out. So let me know if you want me to check out any others that are like this. Don'ts of visiting the UK. That'd be interesting, just to see if it kind of coincides with my understanding of the don'ts or anything that I would add to that. And any other countries, if you want me to check them out, let me know down below. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, let me know. Let me know if there's anything else you want me to check out, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.